Today, I am super excited to have a friend of mine on the podcast, Mr. Bradley Daniel, and he is a self-proclaimed forever DM. And I'm super excited to just have him on today to kind of talk about Dungeons and Dragons and why we love this game so much. And so, thanks, man, for coming on.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. I know we were talking a little bit, literally a couple of minutes before we started rolling, but I kind of wanted to ask you how you first got introduced to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, D&D was never talked about as a positive or a negative when I grew up. I wasn't surrounded by people who played it. I know some people have, like, their friends have super strong positive or negative opinions about it. I literally grew up with no one talking about it. My dad played it in the 80s, and when he got saved and became a Christian, his pastor basically told him, you need to stop playing it. So he put it aside, never introduced me to it, never talked about it. And then one of my neighbors was playing it, and I decided to finally give it a try. I was like, is it as bad as everyone says?
Yeah.
I don't know. I watched Stranger Things. I was like, that seems pretty cool. And we tried it, and I was like, realized, okay, this is just open-ended storytelling, and it's as demonic as you want it to be. I mean, you can make it completely safe, or you can make it completely crazy, or whatever you want. And so when I became a DM myself, I'm like, this is just knights and castles, and you can make it as chill and safe as you want it to make it. So whenever I make it, I like to make it with a little bit of a danger element, but nothing super crazy. So yeah, so in 2020, I decided to get a couple of friends together and DM my first campaign. I went way over the top with it with the story, tried to do way too much, and the campaign ended up crashing and burning, not because of that, but because everyone just kind of moved away and did some of the stuff. And so my second try was way better with the campaign. That one's actually still going.
Oh, wow.
So,
how long has that been going?
Oh, man. My players are going to watch this, and they need to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're entering our third year, entering our fourth.
Dang.
So, yeah.
So that's a long time.
I think so. I think that's right. Yeah.
No, I mean, I look at it as, I feel like Dungeons and Dragons is kind of stigmatized. And so you kind of had like the Satanic Panic of like the 70s when it originally came out. And I know there was even like some weird stuff attached to it with like some type of news stuff that was related to like a murder and some occult practices. But I think that those, but those are really isolated instances where it's like the person themselves was diving into occult, not the game itself. And then, I mean, if you look at main school D&D, like what they sell on the internet, some of the packages, there is like darker stuff, that you can delve into. But it's one of these things where I'm like, I fully agree with you. It's as dark or as light as you want it to be. It's as super creepy as you want it to be. And you can kind of decide at the table, like, as a DM and as a group of players, like, what do you want to explore? I've pondered with the idea of trying to do like, oh, I'll make my own version that's family friendly, or I'll make my own version that is Christian based. But the weird part about doing that is one, if something's not broke, I don't like the idea of trying to fix it. And really, at the end of the day, it's storytelling through this creative medium. And most of it is all just like, you're making it up as you go. So you can decide. It's not like a board game where it's like, you have to play, it has to look like this, or a video game where it's like, it has to look like this. It's very much something, I think there's a lot more fluid, but because of the bad rap, people are super afraid of it.
I like to think of it as, and this is how it was described to me, is collaborative storytelling.
Yeah.
And so when you approach it as collaborative storytelling, and we are all telling the story together, it goes a direction that you let it or want it to go, even with greater or less control over the story itself. That's why we have session zeros where we say things that are off limits. That's why we have boundaries. Like in one of my campaigns, nothing satanic about this, but one of my characters has extreme arachnophobia. And so during session 0, she's like, hey, I know it's weird, but like, can we just not do anything with spiders, please? And so I literally that day had a dungeon planned that was going to have giant spiders, and I changed them to being, I can't remember. I just like kind of like weakened cloakers or something like that. But I had to switch it up in the last second, but like things like that. So yeah, there's nothing evil about rolling a dice.
Yeah.
You know? And in fact, storytelling has been such a powerful medium for good over the course of history in multiple cultures, both within and without religion, that I think it's devastating to throw that aside over the risk of anything evil coming out of it, because any story, it comes out of the heart of the writers, and the intentions of the writers. So me with my campaign, it's castles and armies and kings and queens and there's we have a political intrigue campaign, and we have a kind of a adventurers guild campaign where they're going out and exploring. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things where it really matters who's at the table and the values that you want to share at the table, but it doesn't have to be something that it's so hindering. Like my method that I typically try to do is I have some of these rules from the get-go that I give to players at the table. Something that I'm looking, like when the ebook releases, to have like a part of that as like kind of like what I would call guardrails, but really it's just to provide like a framework so that people can really hone in on the way they want to play. And then I'm also like, it is up to you. Like when you're watching a movie, you decide whether or not you want to watch that movie. If you're listening to a song, you decide like whether you want to listen to that song. And I know that there's, all fantasy is kind of targeted towards younger age brackets, so people have concerns about it. But I think it's one of those things where even though it is something that's really prevalent in the culture, is the kind of, I think, glorification of darker stuff. I think Dungeons and Dragons is as innocent as you want it to be. And personally, I agree with you. I think oral storytelling is innate to the human experience. And I think literally. And so you look at the Bible, and most of modern history that we have recorded was originally oral history. And so these things were passed down, shared with, talked about, and given as actual words and told around, they didn't have dice, but they're around bonfires, sharing these things and learning lessons of life. And so for me, it's one of those things where I try to have some form of morality that guides my stories. I mean, you don't have to. It can sometimes be just like murder goblins and chaos and fun, but I really try to have it where like there's a narrative that is, trying to give a greater message.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of people have issues with magic.
Sure.
Archdevils and that type of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, you're right about in my campaigns, I don't really have like a greater arching morality.
Yeah.
I have different characters with different goals, and oftentimes I set my characters loose to interact with whatever storyline within the world they want to interact with.
Yeah.
There is a BBEG per se, and he has his own goal, and I place him there as generally a certain aspect to explore of like my characters are far enough into it that I can share this. There is a character who is exploring this kind of like age-old philosophy of war purifies, war strengthens a nation, kind of the Roman ideology of like a country that's at peace is given to inner squalor. Council members have ambitions that grasp for power. Politicians turn on the people for their own gain, and they're not united with vision. And so a country at war unites itself under a common cause. There's no time or space to power grab until you find out that there is. You find that in Nazi Germany, there was people within the meritocracy that were grasping for power through war. But it's this idea of this big BEG. He hates politicians. He loves strength of character, and he thinks that men become strong through the fires of war. And so he brings war to a continent basically for the sake of strengthening and purification. And it's kind of like, how do the players come against that ideology? Like, do they approach it with war and just meet war with war? Do they circumnavigate it? And it's fun because I actually have two campaigns that are doing the same campaign.
Oh, wow.
And they're approaching it completely differently.
No, that's fascinating.
One of them is the one that Caleb's in. You've got two brothers and my three brothers, sorry, and then my brother-in-law. You got like this guy in the army, and you got Caleb, and you got this other guy who's a very logical, like he's an electrician. And then there's my brother-in-law who's quite silly, and he's a very fun little sparkle of seasoning on the whole thing. But they are approaching this from a completely different direction of my other party is. And it's fascinating to see how people's convictions come up against grand philosophies. And it's fun to kind of explore those paradigms together. And at the end of the day, it's not making any lasting impact on the world, but it is cool for our own thought processes and our own kind of like worldview to think about, okay, you know, because those things do exist in our world, and I don't like to get preachy in D&D.
Yeah.
Like these things are happening in the background, but you'll never hear me just sitting there talking like this with the BBG, like, and he's preaching at the party members of like the benefits of war.
Yeah.
But it does come through his minions and the way they talk and the way that they carry themselves, and then through one conversation. So yeah, the greater arching morality is an option to be explored.
No, that's super cool. So you were telling me that you essentially have been a forever DM. You've only been a player twice.
In 2 sessions.
In 2 sessions.
Yeah.
Do you remember like what class and race you were for that character?
I was a very classic high elf paladin.
Oh, wow.
Vengeance paladin.
Oh.
And it was the like, this guy killed my parents, you know, like he was so edgy and just like, I was like, how can I make a cool character? Oh man, what if I kill his parents? Like it was just, I knew nothing about D&D and didn't know how cliche that was. So I thought I was making this story rich, you know, cool thing. And there's nothing wrong with making the parents killed background.
The emo paladin.
Yeah, of course, you know. And so he like was trying to rescue his sister from this warlord and blah, 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 blah. And we got a couple sessions into it, and then I moved to another house and had a new baby and had to dip out, and then went back into it, and he started a campaign with other people. So I was like, well, I want to keep going. I guess I'll just make my own campaign. And then I fell in love with world building. So
yeah, no, let's talk more about that. What would you say as a DM, kind of like what is your approach to how you build worlds?
So I prep less per session and more per just kind of creating I like to create a sandbox world. And so you have to understand that I did this the first time during COVID, and I didn't have a job. You know, I had all this time in the world. I was home with my new kid and my wife, and we were chilling. And so I had time to really, really sink into this. This isn't going to be an approachable solution for a lot of people. But
so basically you did like essentially a full-time job.
Full-time did for a bit until I got a job again. So for about 4 months, 5 months, I was full-timing it, and created hundreds of maps. I created a world with a lore, power systems, struggles, personalities, backgrounds, 1,000 years of history. And basically I read someone, I can't remember who the quote was. I wish I could attribute to them, but they said, write the story that would happen if your characters didn't get involved. And so I opened it up with a scene, and there's like, I'm talking about like, I had a calendar where like these events are going to happen, whether the players are there or not, unless their actions affect them. And if they're there when it happens, then they get to experience it. And there's other stuff that happens elsewhere, but there's kind of like keystone events that happen. But like, for instance, one of those keystone events didn't end up happening because the players killed one of the people that was involved in it. So I basically like to set a sandbox world, set the players loose, dangle what I think the main story could be in front of their faces. And if they want to do it, they want to do it. If not, it'll still be happening in the background, and they can just do whatever else. The first time I tried DMing, I tried to have way too much control. I tried to kind of railroad, even though at the time I would have said I'm trying not to. Looking back, I was railroading because I had this goal of where I wanted the players to get to the fun stuff, not realizing that, well, exploring the world and having that freedom of choice is honestly part of the fun. And so is it structureless? No. It's not structural. It's, I do keep the momentum going with nuggets, but for the most part, it's fully homebrewed and just a sandbox world where they can just sit, go, and visit. So
Oh
there's,
wow.
there's 9 major cities that have very fleshed out lore behind them, and very different. And each of them, once again, explores some different aspect of society. Um, and yeah, so one of my characters, one of my parties, they locked in with the main quest, and they're really just hammering through the main quest. One of my other parties are doing a lot of side stuff. They're going to the arena, fighting the arena's gladiators. They're going off and doing this. One of my parties thinks this one guy is a bad guy. My other party, one of their members is dating that guy because they met him in a totally different situation.
Oh my
They don't know whether he's good or bad or not, So, and if they're watching this, I'm not telling them. So,
So you essentially wrote almost like basically a book's worth of lore.
yeah,
Like almost like approaching it kind of like a novel.
Yeah, basically exactly that. Yes. And one day I hope to maybe even publish it as a campaign setting, not as a do this AB checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, but as a, hey, this is a world and there's these kind of characters in the world. Have fun interacting with them however you want.
No, that kind of it makes me think of like, I think you see it in Skyrim. I think you see it in Oblivion or even KOTOR,
which is what I grew up playing.
Yeah, it's like you have a main character, and in the game, obviously, you can make whatever decisions you want, but there's a history that happens, irrespective of what decisions you decide in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I think that's super fascinating. I tend to be not the opposite, but I tend to fly by the seat of my pants. Meaning, I leave everything typically when I DM undefined. I try to base things mainly off of the characters because I want the character buy-in from the players. And I try to have like a few things, because I would say I maybe spend 15 to 20 minutes for a session.
Prepping? Same.
Yes. Like I pretty much am like, I'm not
different reasons, but same.
Yeah, but I was like, I'm not gonna, because what I've noticed is if I try to lock them down to a location, a physical place, it makes it so that I'm railroading. Or you build this encounter out, and I'm not saying you shouldn't build encounters out, but
time for it.
But you build something out, and your players show up, and they figure out how to circumvent it, and they basically avoid like combat with all these NPCs, and then you're like, what do? I have nothing else, and then you're so married to it. Like I was a player for one game, and this guy was DMing, and he set it all up, and we were clever, and we kind of we all rolled to stealth past the issue, and instead of allowing us to kind of circumvent the story, he just came up, which is not bad, but he came up for a reason as to why we didn't succeed on the stealth, even though we had rolled well on the stealth. And it kind of felt like, oh, we're boxed into this combat. Like there's no way we can go around it. So I'd be curious, like, what would you consider, like, how would you define what structure is versus actually railroading the players and taking choices from them?
So certain sessions are going to be more structured whenever your party is coming up on an event. Like the story has been leading naturally to a point. Like, for instance, my players were investigating, I don't want to go too far into it because my other party hasn't gotten there. My players were investigating this person. And they were trying to figure out what's going on. They went and did all this stuff. They went to a vineyard. They went to all these different things to get invited to this royal gala, where like only, merchant lords, royals, like this is an invite only party, and you're going to get arrested if you're there and you're not supposed to be. And they got into this party. And so I'm not improving that, because that's an important part of like, okay, what conversations are going to be happening there that can give them insight into different areas, not just of like the main story, but like I have the merchants talking about ways that they're making deals and people they're trying to, work over. I have the commanders talking about imminent potential wars and threats to the nation, and the jurors of like dealing with politicians. And then I have in the midst of it, the spy master walking through the party, and the party members have no idea. And one of them actually ended up having a run in with them. But so that was more structured. Now, what they do within that was that's structured in a interactive points sort of way. If they never go over here, that thing I prepared, it's gone, and that's okay. And they never got that information, and that's okay. And I try not to punish them for not doing that, because I don't want them to have to feel like they have to explore every nook and cranny of every room they go into, because goodness, that's just mundane. But a general session, when it's not leading to some sort of important pivotal point, is it's very reactionary for me. I like to play as a reactionary DM because, first off, I don't know what they're going to do. I gave up trying to plan around what they're going to do. I have 3 kids. At one point, I was working 2 jobs and 3 kids and trying to, plan for D&D. And I'm like, I have maybe 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to choose a couple maps, have maps ready that we may never use, and then just play off of what they're doing. Riff. Riff. And that's why it's nice to have the flesh out world, because I'm like, I have all these things happening and I can pull this thing out of the back of my ear and just be like, there you go. Cool thing. Yeah.
Well, I also think you fleshing out the world, you're the author of the world. So you would be, not only are you DMing in the world, like most people DM, and in 5e, you're dealing with
pre-built worlds,
Sword Coast. So, I mean, typically the DM gets to decide whether it lines up with lore or not, but you are the author of the lore. So you decide pretty much, well, is this how it would go?
Yeah. Fun fact, I never read any of those.
Really?
I never watched Critical Role. I didn't want to, because I didn't want it to feel like I have to work up to Matt Mercer's level.
Yeah.
I didn't want to feel that pressure, because I'm very that kind of person where I want to be the best DM I can be for the sake of my players. And I don't want that pressure. I'm never going to be Matt Mercer, and that's okay. I'm not a professional voice actor that can pull out 600 different voices off the top of my head. But also, I didn't want it to infect my vision for the world. I wanted it to be natural. And my approach to it was, this was supposed to be a creative outlet for me. And I didn't want to copy and paste. It happens, of course.
Yeah.
I didn't want to copy and paste, though, just things that I've read in different books and things that I wanted to really try and flesh out this world from the ground up. And so if it was to be, influenced by any work, it's obviously gonna be Lord of the Rings, because that's my heart and soul.
I totally get that.
But I don't, if you were to ask me about the D&D lore beyond, like, of course, classes and how they work and things like that, I actually don't know very much, and I'm kind of keeping it that way. I may take some fun characters from the lore and put them in my world. Like, they had a run-in with Xanathar, which is, with a fun little thing. But beyond that, I mean, I never read that stuff.
Yeah, typically when I plan, I do short sessions, or not short sessions, but I do short little 15, 20 minutes. I don't have a lived-in world, so I'm kind of playing in the D&D, their pond, essentially.
Sure.
But for the most part, I don't own any reference material. I've had people buy me some reference material and I've looked at it, but mostly I use it for mobs. Like, I try to think of, this is a cool monster. Yeah. It's a stat block that I can easily copy and paste and throw into something, make it more interesting. But a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm prepping a few locations. Now, I feel, I'm going to be honest and say I do the opposite of what you do, but it works in the sense of, like, I pull from characters that I know well.
Great.
And then I slightly change them. Meaning, like, I think of, if this villain was Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker as a villain.
As a villain. Ooh. And then maybe I change the gender. And then I try to think of what that character, how they would act in that. Yeah, in the situation, but they're not necessarily word for word the exact same character.
I have one. One of the generals of my BBEG, I did model him after a blue guy from Star Wars, the general.
Thrawn. Right.
I loved the cold, calculating, it's nothing personal approach to battle.
Yeah.
And he has, I did kind of, I do it too. I do it too.
No, because it's one of those things where, well, also it's like,
he's my favorite villain.
I do it with bigger characters, but sometimes I try to write original characters. So I'm like, this is a character I made up. But for NPCs, it's some, like, that I'm making up on the fly. It's sometimes easier. Like, I know what this person acts like. And then sometimes I'm like, I just pull stuff out. And if I'm 30, I'm about to be 33, but I'll be 33 when this episode comes out. And I play mostly with a 22-year-old and a 21-year-old. Mm-hmm. So there's things that, like, I love that they've never even heard of, never watched,
is KOTOR?
never read. They're like, what is KOTOR? Or
Who's Nihilus?
Or one of the big things that I've done is I pulled stuff from Stargate SG-1 because I love that show so much.
I love it so much.
But they've never heard of it because they're like, what? Like they were like 2 or 3 when the show was premiering on TV.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can pull some of these like interesting characters. But I think at the end of the day, like every story is kind of pulling from another story.
Sure.
Like good storytelling beats are good storytelling beats. The hero's journey is the hero's journey. The only time we tend to see it is kind of like in certain situations where in pop culture a movie comes out and they don't follow a hero's journey, and you notice a lot of people tend to not love it. So I think there's always going to be that element. What do you know, how much time did you spend kind of building this world out, would you say?
I mean, it's ongoing.
So you're constantly building.
I'm thinking future wise as well as, you know, as my characters are, this is supposed to be collaborative storytelling. I'm not just creating this plate of a world and going to present that to the public in the future. I'm going to allow them to craft it and mold it and change it and stuff. And there's been a couple of events, and once again, very differently between the parties that have happened, that I'm like, I like that way better than whatever I originally planned it on or intended on happening. And this, I feel like every DM can always say that, you know, there's always the DM joke of like, they plan on this, there being this twist, and the party member's like, ooh, what if this is about to happen? And he's like, yes, that is definitely what was going to happen all along. That is what I planned. You found it. And, so I guess I spent 6 months really fleshing it out, really making the beer.
Time.
It is, but then that was, you know, 4
COVID.
months
You're
full
locked
time,
down.
2 months of dreaming, 4 months of full time COVID, and then but ever since then it's been, you know, if I ever have a thought, I just like, oh, that's a cool idea. I'll just write it on my phone, kind of, and just think about it and flesh it out. And as I watch a movie or talk to someone, or especially one of my other DM friends, and they have this thing going on, I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. And so it's supposed to be a living world. And it's very different now than when I originally made it. First off, more fleshed out. You know, I feel happy for my second party that they're playing after the first one had been playing for a few years, because they get to experience it as like a really rich, really deep, like a lot of stuff going on. And my first party, I'm glad they liked the campaign, but I was still figuring it out and letting the world come to life. And so, I would say, I don't know if I'll ever be done building this world. If I had my way, I will continue writing stories in this world, you know, for the next 20 years, because I'm really excited for when my sons get old enough and I get to have them experience it. And then the question is, okay, do I start the campaign at the same spot I did with these other two parties, or do I go to a completely different spot, different timeline, a prequel? Because there was this grand event that happened 70 years before the party enters the scene that could be its own campaign. And there was the grand event that happened 1,000 years before. That was this world-changing event. That could be around that too. And so there's a lot of different directions that you could hit this world from that I want to explore. So it's almost like discovering my own world that I created, if that makes sense.
No, that's amazing. You're inspiring me to think about building something out.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think I have 6 months
Just
or
do a
that much
city.
free time.
Just do a city.
Do a city.
Do a city. Don't do a world.
Don't do a world.
If I were to do this now, with the amount of time that I have, which is nil, not much at all, I would do a city. And I would make that city rich. I would have, you know, the overcity and the undercity. I would have their reactions and relations to surrounding cities. What does the outside world look like? I even thought about doing a kind of post-apocalyptic classic campaign where you can't leave the city walls. No one has, kind of like Snowpiercer on the train style, but like, why? You know? And so then you're stuck in the city, but it's a big city and there's plenty of places to go and people to see. But, you know, and that's, I feel like that's a lot, in some ways, easier to flesh out, because it's not multiple themes. It's not multiple cultures, unless you want it to be, you know, the world was ambitious, and I'm a very ambitious person, and sometimes I bite off more than I could chew, which is why it's taken me 6 years to write this world.
No, I mean, but I look at it like Tolkien wrote in his world till the day he died,
and
like,
he wasn't done.
No, And I would say that if he had lived longer, we probably would have more information about Lord of the Rings, and about the entire world. And I mean, he goes into a lot of it in several of the other recent books that have come out, like that his son has helped, take some of these letters and bring to life.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's a way. You start with a city, you branch out, you figure it out. I'm going to segue a little bit, but when you're designing a session, because we touched on it a little bit, what's the one thing that you always prepare no matter what? Like you don't have the most amount of time. What would you say is a big thing you prioritize?
The theme, I would say. Is this going to be whimsical? Is it going to be somber? Is it going to progress the story, or is it going to be side track? And even then that could be dropped. And then the theme, I always play with music. I always have ambiance going. I'm one of those DMs. I like that.
Gotta have music.
Sometimes I do animated maps. Sometimes I do things like that.
What do you like by animated maps?
So, and then we can get on this too. So one of my parties, I run fully online.
Oh.
I have a player in Alaska, a player in California, Louisiana, and one here in Kansas City, and me. And we all play together.
So you're doing that in Owlbear, or
we do Owlbear Rodeo, and
yeah.
then I wanted to try out Foundry, but I have literally like 1,200 maps on Owlbear, and the thought of importing those between each other terrifies me. So I don't think I'll ever leave.
There's some weird dock port, like there's some weird port thing.
And Owlbear just included animated spells and stuff. Like if you shoot an arrow, not just spells, but like actions. Like if you shoot an arrow, you can select this, and like actually have the arrow animate between them with sound effects. It's really cool. Anyways, and
this is not a sponsored video.
But and then I use Kenku FM for integrating sounds with Discord. And so we're sitting in Discord with Kenku FM that I can have another.
Is that a bot?
It's a Discord add-on, actually.
Oh wow,
for free.
Well, because I've done
within Kenku, you can open YouTube, Spotify, any website you want to. And
I've done it where it lets you stream, and I've played YouTube music from that. But then you've got ads. Does Kenku bypass the ads?
Kenku does not bypass the ads. My players paid for me to have YouTube Premium.
Wow.
Because they were basically like, one of them said, Chris, love you, Chris, was basically like, hey, you're putting so much work into this.
Yeah.
Like, we want to help out. And so
I need to get new players. Like I
leveling your DMs.
I need players who are gonna buy me YouTube Premium.
And so I've had Spotify Premium for years, and I use that as well for stuff. But and then I also use Describe.
Oh wow,
as well. So yeah.
So you run the session there, and you're able to fully animate everything from a tabletop essentially through Owlbear.
Yeah, I mean, I try to, but sometimes I get, there's too much stuff going on or whatever, and I drop it for a second. That's fine. And then my in-person parties, I was like, I have 1,200 maps to choose from. Like that could fit any scenario. I don't want to drop them. So I'm like, how do I utilize all the stuff that I've already prepped for with the online and the in-person? So I got a projector, a mobile projector to shoot down onto the.
I've wanted to do it so bad. Literally, this is terrible, but it's like my TikTok algorithm is just these projectors over and over and over.
New DMs, you can just use paper and pencil and
just totally fine.
Little thimbles as people. You don't have to. I like to go big or go home. That's me. And so I like to make a show of it, and I like to immerse my players as much in it as you can, because first off, we're all 30-somethings, sometimes 40-somethings that are trying to role play with each other, and you're like, I want to bypass and tear down as many of those awkward boundaries as you can. And whenever you're in it and you're feeling it, it makes it so much easier. Whenever one person goes hard, it's easier to just kind of like meet them a little bit.
Yeah.
And my players have, and they've all been so good with it. So themes, my main thing. So the theme dictates the direction of the session, barring the players.
So we talked about this a little bit, but how do you decide essentially when to protect like a story beat versus when to let the player choices essentially dismantle it?
My first campaign, I attempted to do that. And it just, some things happened that it cheapened it and it wasn't fun. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to do that, but for me personally, in my DMing style, I don't. I don't protect any of that. I mean, you mean beyond like, oh, this character is important to the story kind of a thing? Or like,
I mean, I would say like with some decisions. I mean, obviously, like like I think about it as like I'm not gonna let them attack the BBEG before like we get to the end of.
oh, I do. And
You really?
he'll probably kill them.
So you're essentially you'll just allow if they make it.
So in session 0, I say you guys can get yourselves into as much trouble as you want to, and you can. I will generally always leave an out, but you will never go into the situation without understanding the danger you're going into. So they know the BBG. I introduced them to how powerful he was session 1. The introduction was there was an attack on the city. They ran out. There was this paladin that was an NPC that charged the gates and ran out and found a lone person riding a nightmare out in the field, just kind of staring at the city walls. And he says, "I've returned to your spies," and he throws a sack down to the ground, which you can say what it is. But and then they run out. Paladin charges head on. Power word kill. He says fall, and the guy just dies right there.
Oh dang!
So like they know how powerful he is. If they then decide at level 3, I want to go charge his castle, okay, go ahead. You can certainly try.
Those are the words that everybody.
Yeah. And so
fear
my characters have run Crying and Screaming from Dragons. They've run Crying and Screaming from one of the BBG's generals because they thought maybe we're powerful enough now. Let's go find this guy. They hunted him down, and they found out that he's a little bit too powerful for us. So they ran, barely escaped with their life. And so if I'm not afraid. I'm no longer afraid of TPKs. It's never happened in 6 years. I've never had a TPK, but in session 0, I tell everyone, hey, death is a real possibility because it's not. I think it's not fun.
It's not fun without the risk.
Like if there's no risk, get fall in love with your character, invest in them, and you'll care even more about losing them. Because you get drawn and you care about your character, and you get to the point where you start to make smarter decisions only for the sake of self-preservation because you put so much time and effort into your character. So I'm at the point now where I'm like, I don't have to worry about them being that, stupid with it, so I don't protect it. So if they go kill the king, great. Your guys are wanted in the kingdom now. If they go open the gates of the city and let the BBEG in, what's that world going to look like? How are we going to deal with that? Where do you guys go from there? Because, and so if it's going to be a living world, it's going to be a living world. I have a grand idea of a storyline but it's just based around, it's just based around the goals of the BBG. That's it.
So there's essentially going to be consequences for their actions.
It's a game of consequences. It's a game of push and pull. So
you haven't TPK'd anyone?
No, there has been player deaths.
There has been player deaths.
One of them was an epic. Caleb was an epic sacrifice.
Oh wow!
And so
do you plan those type of things with players? No. But do you give them the choice?
Once I did. One of my players. So I always have a rule in my campaigns that like, hey, especially with new players, try stuff out. You don't know what kind of character you're gonna like. You have from level 1 until 3, 4. Once you hit level 4, I want you to be locked in with your character. You have level 1 through 3 to figure out if you like this guy or not and abandon them, basically. I don't want you to get level 5 and level 6 and start abandoning your character. Like, level 1 through 3 should give you enough of an idea of what the character's going to be like to decide if you like them or not, and there's free reign to just drop them and make a new character. So we were level, I think, 2, and she decided, I don't like this character. I think I want to make a new one. So without telling the rest of the party, we planned her death. And it was fun. But we still made it meaningful. And it made it impactful for everyone else too. And it kind of showed them hey, I'm not afraid to kill you guys. Some DMs might take her character card and use it as an NPC elsewhere. I'm like, I got plenty of NPCs. I don't need your character.
No. Well, I mean, I've seen people that are like, we never kill our players. And then I've seen people take the approach of like, they Dwight Schrute it. Like on session session 1, they pick one character and that's the character that goes.
Sure.
I had a friend who he did a one shot where literally he's like, make sure you bring 2 character sheets. And I was like, what?
I'm not usually that brutal because it's a long-term campaign.
Yeah.
I would definitely be that kind of DM to be that brutal in a one shot. But no, there are definitely brutal moments, but I will always say there's, There's your words, there's your wits, and there's your whack stick. Those are your 3 ways to get out of it. You can fight your way out, you can use your brain, and you can use your words to try and get out of any situation. Even with the dragon, even with other, your attempt at escape might be unsuccessful, but I will always leave an out. I will always leave an out. And so you decide to go charge the castle of the BBG at level 3. Okay, I will think of a way to facilitate your bad decisions and give you an out. That is my own, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there will be wits ability to be used to get out of that situation. So, yeah.
So this happens. I mean, I think it happens to all of us, but whenever you have it where an idea or a session, like, doesn't necessarily land with the players or even land the way you hope. One, how do you fix it like on the fly, and how do you in retrospect kind of evaluate what went wrong and adjust for it?
I'll give two examples. One from my first ever campaign when I was a brand new DM, because there was definitely a couple of those where I had this cool idea that I thought was going to be super fun, and then it wasn't fun. And then I'll give you one from more recently that was less fun for reasons that I wasn't expecting. So when I was a brand new DM, I had this cool scenario where the players were climbing a mountain. They were trying to go to this place, and there was going to be an avalanche, and they're trying to get across old rickety bridges and, climb icy, slippery slopes and stuff. And it sounds cool visually, right? But when you get down to it and you're just rolling for athletics and rolling for it's not very fun.
No.
And it's hard to make that engaging and interesting. And it was a boring session that, if it was on a screen, would have been really cool to watch. But in a session, it was 30 minutes of just, I tripped again and slid 5 feet backwards. And it was just like, it wasn't very fun. I think understanding the translation of cool action sequences to your rolling dice, is that's an important thing to remember. Like, you can have this cool thing in your head, but when it comes to the table, it doesn't always translate. So what ends up being interesting on the table is, and again, there was no player choices in that. It was just, I have to go that way. Only one way to do it, and I roll for it, and I failed, and now what? Yeah. And so the more recently was, our players were attacking a fort, and they had a private army at their back, about 200 soldiers. They were doing it right, doing great. The action sequences with the combat were very fun, good stuff. I had catapults going off, and I would roll a D100, and I'd have everyone else choose a number between 1 and 100. And if it rolled their number, they get hit with a ballista bolt. Kind of stuff like that. It never happened, but if it would have happened, hello, instant death. You're in death saving rolls. So it never happened, but it was always that element of danger, and they're bobbing and weaving through the combat and climbing the walls and trying to get to the keep. But we had 6 players, and combat with 6 players takes a while.
Yeah, it does.
Combat with 6 players and 2 armies
takes a long
time. And I found ways that the fort sequence, attacking the fort, took 4 weeks. It was 4 separate sessions to attack the fort. And by the second and third, I would say by the third and fourth, I had found ways to streamline, make it quicker. But like, for instance, my sister, who is newer to D&D, still trying to figure out her character, and she's getting frustrated whenever she's taking damage. She doesn't want to take damage. She doesn't want to die. She doesn't want there to be a risk of death incessantly. It's just 3 hours for once a week for 4 weeks of stress, and she's like, I don't like this. And so I would have found different ways to approach that for my characters who are not all about combat. That was a scenario that I built around my original party, who are these sweet 4 boys who love bonking things, and they love combat sequences. And one of those players probably would be fine with there being no role play and just doing combat, whereas my other party loves the role play and they want to engage in that. And it was 4 weeks of very little role play and mostly just combat. And so I had to take that into consideration of like, know your players, and what's fun for one party might not be fun for another party.
No, I think that is something that I think affects the way that you make decisions at the table. is the players themselves. Do you personally, though, tend to lean more towards role playing or combat? Because I've been in several different groups, both with both guys and girls, where some love combat, some hate it, some love role playing, some hate it. What do you personally lean towards more?
I can't say I do lean.
You try to have both.
I prefer quality combat and quality role play, and combat that stems out of a role playing choice and scenario is so much more meaningful and fun. You know, like we're going to travel from this city to that city and random encounter roll for robbers. Oh, now you got to fight some robbers. I get that. I get the appeal. I don't usually do those in my campaigns unless it makes sense and they're going through the robber woods and it's narratively makes sense. And so one of my favorite role-playing moments, that's hard to choose actually. One of the many role-playing moments I loved was with my 4-player party when they were off. This guy's sheep had been taken and they found large claw marks, and so they go look for him. Ends up being a young blue dragon. They're fighting it. They're lower-ish level, but they're enough level to take it, but they're struggling to fight this thing. To give you an idea of why, one of our players, not going to name any names, decides he wanted to attempt to grab the dragon by the horns and roll for intimidation.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that's cool, but let's see how that plays out. It didn't work.
No.
And now he's got dragon by the horns, and the dragon's mouth is like at his chest. And what's the dragon going to do?
Fight.
Snap.
Yeah.
And so dragon grabs him, flies up immediately. Now the rest of the party is looking at him going into the air. Okay, so this is roleplay and combat.
Yeah.
Because like, what are we going to do? Our friend is up in the sky. If he falls, he's dead. If he gets numb-numbed, he's dead. And so they do this thing, get up on his wings. They cut the dragon's wings. He starts to fall, but they can't lodge him free of the dragon's mouth. And his arm is in the dragon's mouth, and the dragon falls and hits the ground. Well, bye arm.
Yeah.
And so there's this moment where they don't know if he's alive or not. And I turn on the dramatic music, and it wasn't cheesy. It actually worked out really well. And that player didn't know if he was alive or dead either, because I did some rolls, I did some damage rolls, and we just kind of played it down. I'm like, as you guys look at him, you put your finger under his nose, you don't feel anything, and you look and just see them ever so slightly rise and fall of the chest, and that's the only way that you know now that he is alive. Now it's, what do we do? Role play. Boom. How do we heal him? Where do we go? Let's find someone. Let's talk to someone. And so those are the moments that I live for. Is quality role play that stems from quality combat that stems from quality role play. I think they feed together.
Yeah.
They should feed together.
I mean, but I've definitely been in groups where people just want combat after combat after combat, and I kind of call them the video. I kind of call them like the video game junkies. Like they're looking for D&D to be
play Warhammer.
Yeah, totally. But then I've been at tables where like I have a group of friends where they've role played for 2 sessions and there's no combat.
We've had that.
Just you're going through the story, absolutely. You're investing, and it also I think depends on the style. Like I had a friend, they did a heist. The whole campaign was a heist, so it's like the end of the campaign. They either are successful and they pull off the heist or not. So the majority of the campaign wasn't combat. The majority of their campaign was getting supplies, figuring out schematics, like how do we figure out how to break into that vault. Yes. So I think that's the main thing, is having action. Action is the main thing, something going on, because then it's just you as a DM describing things while people listen to you, which is not bad, but you don't want that to be the majority of what people encounter. What would you recommend for new DMs out there? People that are really new to Dungeons and Dragons, they're wanting to get into the DMing spot. I mean, there is a joke that once you start, like you're stuck in that role.
Yeah.
But what would be some of your advice as someone who's been, you said you've been DMing
for 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a broad net. There's so much. Don't be afraid to abandon the rules that aren't fun and add rules that make it more fun. Homebrew is the name of the game with D&D. And you'll find great resources from veteran DMs who actually add more rules that make it more fun,
Mm.
and take away rules that, like, we don't track food and water.
No.
We don't track. I do a random audit with weight. It can go 6 weeks, and if I say, okay, weight check, and you have 30 great swords in your backpack, all right, you're going to take a level of exhaustion and drop everything in your inventory down to weight. We don't incessantly just, baby our weight in our backpack. That's not fun. And so, homebrew is your friend, and don't be afraid to change the rules as the campaign continues and add and remove rules. And don't be afraid to morph it to the needs of that specific party, because like you said, every campaign is going to be completely different. I have 2 campaigns that are the same campaign, but the players have made it a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And so,
What would you say that D&D has kind of taught you about collaboration, communication, and storytelling overall?
Many things. First off, relinquishment of control. I have this idea that I think will be fun, and I'm going to really impose this idea upon you to come along with me, instead of, it requires collaboration. Collaboration within itself is a skill and a beneficial encounter with other human beings. When you collaborate in the workplace, when you collaborate in your marriage, when you collaborate as a family, like, collaboration is a social nugget. It's a social benefit, and it is uplifting and edifying. And so when you have these friends who sometimes you may not even know super well, but now you're collaborating to make this story together, it creates lasting friendships. It fills a social meter of, not love, but, friendship.
Yeah.
It fills your love meter. And beyond that, I mean, there's so much. There's so much. Yeah.
So this is a question I think I've asked most of the people that have been on. But what is, like, your Dungeons and Dragons hot take? Something that is controversial, something that you're like, hey, I would love to totally get rid of this and it never be in the game ever again, or something you think is just kind of like dumb that everybody embraces.
I'm gonna have to think for that for a second.
No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine.
Oh, wow. My hot take. There's so many hot takes online out there,
I know.
that I've read them all because I'm like, how do I become a better DM? Let's search Reddit.
Yeah, I mean, we had someone, the last thing that they said was no resurrection tropes.
Ooh,
Because they're like,
yeah,
no, just let death be
You were
death.
dreaming all along. Yeah.
They're like, no, let permadeath be permadeath. Like,
I do agree with that,
dead,
and
you're dead.
I do that as well. I made resurrection incredibly difficult and expensive in my world, to where it's basically going to be nigh on possible. Hot take, man.
could also be just your shtick, or like your, I think of it more as the DM soapbox that you're always on.
Yeah, I feel like I would have more of an opinion if I was in sessions with other DMs, with me, my players. I mean, like, you have to understand, both of my parties, this party of 4, all 4 of them, it was their first time ever playing D&D.
Yeah.
They've never had a DM besides me. And this other one of 6 people, now 7, 5 of those 7 are first time players as well. And so, I hate to not be controversial, but I don't think I have one.
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I think it's, I think it's just a fun question. And 2, sometimes you get like interesting, like, things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, you don't have to have a controversial take.
Yeah. I mean, there's all the normal ones, like, don't be afraid to plagiarize. Like, we're not
Steal everything.
Steal everything, unless you're planning on publishing your source material, like I am.
Or we had someone say that what is it? Brennan Lee Mulligan is better than Matt Mercer. That was their.
I agree with that.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
Matt Mercer is insanely talented.
Yeah.
We just happen to be living in a time and age when there just happens to be one in proximity with him that is even better.
Yeah.
And I even hate comparing them because they're just different. Because I mean, like, Matt Mercer's, if anyone could reach his level per se, like, they're an insanely good DM that deserves to be able to do this for full time for a living and very quite wealthy with it. Brendan Lee Mulligan is just one of the best improvisers and one of the most witty people.
Yes.
That I think I've I've seen.
I would say that
His ability to think on his feet.
he is the I did not, I'll say this, I'll admit this, which is probably a no on the internet. But I did not watch Critical Role until Brendan Lee Mulligan became
really?
a part of it just recently.
Well,
and
I
it's
already admitted that too.
it's mainly because like I don't dislike Matt Mercer.
Yeah.
I think he's extremely talented.
Yeah.
But I think he tends to be so open-handed, like he will let players fully make every decision.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's less, which is not a bad thing, but I do think that not only is Brendan Lee Mulligan very, very interactive and witty and funny, but I think that he will push back with the players. Like he's not the person that's going to railroad them, but he's going to be like, are you really sure? And then actually not just say, are you sure? And let the player decide whether or not to roll with it. But he's going to like have, hey, there's going to be some consequences. There's going to be like something weird. Like are you sure you want it? Like if you go ahead with this decision, it's going to dramatically, which is kind of what you described earlier, which is this decision is going to dramatically change the course of events.
Yeah.
You can definitely go this way.
Yeah.
But be warned, it's going to be, and I also think they both have a different level of overall energy and enthusiasm that they bring to the table.
I'll say that. I guess this is my soapbox. DMs don't try and be Brendan Lee Mulligan and Matt Mercer. We hear him say it. We hear people say that. It's not a hot take, but we forget that. We want to be this like
super DM,
witty, like super DM, like, oh, I got you with my hook, kind of a thing. And I've been building this hook for 6 months and I gotcha. It doesn't always work out like that. Players, you're not professional voice actors. The people you're playing with are not professional voice actors. Your DM is not a professional voice actor. We're not being paid. Well, sometimes we are, but we're not being paid for this. Have fun in the charming mediocrity of everyday people, stumbling about in their role play. I never did play acting. I never did theater. I never did any of that stuff. I never would have thought 22-year-old Bradley would have never thought that he would be doing voices for a group of 6 people.
Yeah.
That thought would have made him cringe. And it is cringe, and that's fine.
It's definitely cringe. No, honestly, I think there's a beauty in the mediocrity.
It's charming mediocrity.
And sometimes things are funnier because people are not
the horrible role play.
Yeah.
Let me tell a story about that. The gala sequence that I told you about. My players get to the gala. One of my players has a noble background. He thinks, oh, I'm a noble background. I could totally fit in here. His player's a noble background. He's not a very noble gentleman. He's a great guy. I love him. I love you. But he doesn't have the candor of the aura of a noble. So bro is walking down the buffet aisle, listening into conversations, spotted from across the room, roll perception, spotted from across the room. Spy Master notices this guy he doesn't recognize, hovering and lingering next to the Crown Prince, who's trying to have a conversation with with some people at the party. Crown Prince comes up and says, "Hi, I'm Redwald. What's your name?" And he's like, "Oh, me? I guess I'm not gonna say his name. I'm, Bob. I'm the spy master."
Oh my God.
And he's like, "Oh, really? That's nice to meet you. I'm the spy master." And he goes, want a truffle? And he gets arrested.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. No, honestly, my first session, like my first campaign that I did, it was wacky. Almost, I would say there's 4 of us, and literally I think the DM was not super emotive because it was his first time DMing.
Hey, sure.
And he wasn't a very emotive guy in general.
Hey, sure.
And then I had a friend, you worked with her, Christy.
Which Christy?
A
lot of Christies.
She drums.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And she was a fictional half elf that was cursed to be a carrot, which is the weirdest story trope ever. Which is also funny because we didn't know this until session 1 because no one shared their characters till session 1. But one of the other players at the table was actually I forget the name of the race because there's so many races in D&D, but he was essentially a rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
And she's a carrot, but she's like the most monotone, chill person. And then our DM was kind of the most monotone, chill person. And then you have the guy pretending to be essentially a rabbit barbarian and is running around the most animated ever, and just having the juxtaposition of different people, I think it's fun. And honestly, like, I think even then sometimes they surprise you. Like, one of my close friends, he was on the podcast, but he's way more soft spoken. But he does DM, and he loves DMing. But I've had some moments with him where I'm like, he did this serious moment between like me and him as kind of like the end to a campaign, and I was like, oh, like this just hit me in the feels. And you're not like the most like energetic voice actory person. Like, sometimes his characters sound the same, and sometimes he gets really clever with them, but I was like, man, like, he's not what you would think of as like the emphatic DM that's you see all over the internet. And so I was like, wow, like, that really hit hard, and it had emotional depth, and it was like kind of the putting to bed of this character that I had played for a year and a half, and saying goodbye, and having that emotional send off. But I think what made it special was he helped develop that character over the year and a half, and even though he wasn't the most animated guy in the world, he was part of kind of that back and forth collaborative storytelling, and so we were able to send that character off. He got like the goodbye, and the character arc ended with growth and him like being reunited with a spouse who had thought to be dead, essentially.
It's amazing how character growth, especially with new players, can just happen naturally. Because
totally,
in the beginning, you're a new player. You don't really know how to role play your guy very well. Your guy is going to come off as not super confident, unless you are, of course. That can happen sometimes. But and then over 6 months of playing D&D, as you become more comfortable role playing and become more comfortable expressing the ideas that you have with this character, and sometimes people just do myself in the world, and that's great too. Even then, you do see like this interesting character growth happen naturally, as long as you are being attentive and actually engaging in the story. That is kind of like, now that I think of it, it's one of the things that I love, and I never really thought about was, I'm thinking back on both of my parties, and these guys were my coworkers in my previous job, and we've been going for almost a year now. And these guys are my best friends, his brothers, who are also my best friends, and my brother-in-law, and there's been character growth. It's very interesting. Like, I just in this moment am considering that. In this party, one of them is he is a warlock who thinks he's a paladin.
That's interesting.
And he's finally getting to the point where he's realizing the deception and the kind of disillusionment that surrounded his decision to become an adventurer and a hero. And he's coming to grips with the reality of the reason and the why behind he's doing what he's doing. And there's even been a couple of moments where I, as a DM, debated him as a character on the philosophies of the BBG, and him as a person found himself agreeing with what was being said, and he had to come wrestle with that with his own character. And like, his character is supposed to be like, no, you're wrong, but him as a person is like, no, what he's saying is true. Corruption is real, and this stuff, and they should be uprooted and all this stuff. And it's kind of fascinating now that I think of it. So
yeah, no, that's amazing. It makes me think of like, you listen to Thanos and you're like, maybe he's not. Maybe there's something to what he's saying here.
Or is it Theanor did nothing wrong?
Yeah. I'm like, you're like, this is very logical for a villain, where I'm like, is he wrong?
Yeah.
Though?
And the gray morality trope is sometimes too much done.
Too much done. Yeah.
I want to be clear that this is not a gray morality villain. No. This is a guy who has a grand plan, and some of the byproducts of that plan might be good, like the abolishment of these corrupt politicians, but the way he's going about it is without a doubt evil and wrong.
Now I get that.
So
this will be probably my final softball to you before we finish. What do you love about Dungeons and Dragons? What makes it special to you?
I love the freedom to express and create together with my friends. Sometimes we get together, eat some food, fun, talk, fun, catch up on life, fun, play a video game together, great. But there is something special about creating something together that's all of ours. I got to have one of my friends, Victoria, if she's watching this, thank you, Victoria. Um, I commissioned her to do a painting of all of our player characters sitting around a table, and they were like all doing things that were silly or quirky that their characters would do. Like
That's amazing.
my wife's character is a Felis, which is it's just a house cat that can talk basically. And one of my other characters is holding up a bowl to shine a light to make a little laser, and she's chasing it in the painting. And when she finished the painting, I kind of got it and I was like, man, like we've had years now of like awesome memories, and beyond the fact that we are 4 grown adults that have somehow managed to carve out 3 hours of an afternoon once every 2 weeks for years now and done it consistently, that it just shows the intentionality behind it to be friends together and create something together. And the expressiveness makes us, it just injects it with all of our personalities and our humors. Like, and it's infectious. And you look at their campaign and where it's at right now, and it just oozes with the essence of all of my friends. You know, the stupid stuff that's happening in the world, the cool stuff that's happening in the world. They are cool, they are silly, and they have crafted something beautiful. So
no, that's amazing. Honestly, I would say I'm in the same, like, I totally agree. Like, telling stories, going somewhere together and experiencing that. Like, I'm really hoping, I've not been in anything super long term. I've always been in like a year and a half, or let's do a few one shots. So that's something I look forward to, is being able to have like 3, 4, 5 years of just growth and journey and friendships growing. And but I think that's what the heart of what Dungeons and Dragons is having that collaborative storytelling, that really allows us to grow together and make memories. So Bradley, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And that's going to be a wrap.